Welcome to this special episode of Lyckligare.NU, or Happier Now, as we say in Swedish. Today we have our new friend Joey Bailey with us. Welcome, Joe.
Hello, good to be with you guys.
It's lovely to have you.
Yeah, really nice.
I've not been to Sweden. I'm hoping to go there. My new book is going to be available all over Europe, and so they might do a tour this fall when it comes out in October. We'll see.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, you have to come and visit us here in Sweden. That would be great.
Yeah. You are welcome.
So,
welcome. Is that it? Is that the right word?
Välkommen is in Swedish.
Välkommen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. You're a star already. Yeah.
Well, I've been around it all my life. We have a radio show for many years here called Lake Wobegon, and it's all about the Scandinavians and the Lutheran Church, and it's a comedy kind of thing that was very, very popular here. So he was always making fun of the Scandinavians.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And he's Scandinavian, so.
Yeah. So I met you at the How to Connect with Human series, the webinars that Carolina and Wayne are running, our dear friends.
Yeah.
It was really nice, and then I also watched your talk at the 3P UK conference, and I really liked that one as well. So I thought it would be very nice to have you here on our podcast as well.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. And then after that, I thought, oh well, I must try to read one of your books. So I ordered this one, Slowing Down to the Speed of Love.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and I have started to read it, and it's such a nice feeling, just turning the pages and getting a sense of the book. So I really look forward to finishing that as well. And the funny thing is that our friend Kelly Mabel, when she was joining our podcast, I was sort of reflecting on what should we talk about and what should the title be. And then I thought, well, we're sort of slowing down to something with this understanding, and as we progress, it's perhaps gets slower and slower. So what are we slowing down to? And then it just came to my mind, we're slowing down to the speed of love. And then I realized, well, that's your book title.
So we borrowed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, good.
So we already have one episode that is called Slowing Down to the Speed of Love.
Oh, well, we would call this one Slowing Down to the Speed of Life then.
Yeah.
The other one, so. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So I read that you have been around this understanding for quite some time now, and that you met Sid Banks in the 1980s and have done some impressive work in many different fields since then. So I guess you must have been really, really young when you met Sid Banks.
Well, if you'd like, I'll tell the story.
Yeah, sure.
Please
the short version or the longer version.
Start and we'll see what's happened.
So when I was in my 20s, I was in graduate school to become a clinical psychologist, and then graduated and started doing counseling with people, and ended up working a lot in the addiction field and alcoholism, and became the director of prevention for the state of Texas, and also was a trainer training counselors who worked with alcoholics, with drug addicts. And then I moved back to Minnesota. I had been going to graduate school in Texas, but when my son was born, we moved back to Minnesota, and I got a job working at a training center for addiction. And so anyway, and then I got into private practice, and so I had my son and went through a divorce, and my life was kind of a mess. And I was really, during that whole time, I was a searcher. I was always searching for something more. Something was missing in psychotherapy. Something was missing in our understanding of how to help people. And I got into the field because I wanted to help people. I really wanted to help people. But what I've kept seeing was the same people coming back again and again, working on another issue and another issue and another issue, because it was like I was more like a restaurant, giving them a meal each time they came, but I wasn't teaching them how to cook their own meal. And I thought that was my job, was to fix the problems. But in the process of doing that with people, and the revolving door of people just keep coming back again and again and really not getting well, they didn't get really happy. They just got better at coping with their pathology, with their depression, their anxiety, their whatever issues they might be having. I taught couples how to fight, effectively, and all of this crazy stuff. And but it was the best it was innocent. It was the best I knew to do. It was the best that was available. And but I was burning out. I was starting to fantasize about leaving the profession and doing something else, because I just felt like this isn't working. It's not working for me. It's not working for my clients. It was a good living. People kept coming back. I was successful in the sense of monetary wise. It was profitable to keep seeing people for years after year. But I felt like I was a fraud. I wasn't really living what I was promising them. And so I kept searching. And then one day, my friend Keith Blevins, Dr. Keith Blevins, who I went to graduate school with, and who also introduced me to my wife.
Great guy.
Yeah. He called me, and his wife Valda said, Sid Banks is going to be speaking at the University of Miami Medical School. Why don't you come down? And by the way, there's this gal we'd really like you to meet named Michael. I said, well, tell me more about both, And something in me just was like a magnet pulled to do this. And I just said, yeah, okay, I'll do it. Even though I didn't know how I was going to afford it or take the time off and all of that. So there I was in Miami, and that weekend, Sydney was going to be speaking at the medical school. And but then the night before, they all gathered at Rick Suarez's sister's house. We had a dinner and maybe about a dozen people. And but earlier, we went to pick up Michael at the airport. And when I met her, it was just, I fell in love with her immediately. And it was mutual, thank God.
That's beautiful.
And so it was quite a day in my life that I met Michael, who we've just celebrated our 39th wedding anniversary this last week. And that night, then I met Sid Banks. And I was very cynical at that stage of my life. I'd been to California, studied all these new age therapies, humanistic psychology. I'd trained with some of the best therapists in America, Virginia Satir, Milton Erickson, all these very famous therapists. And so I just thought, maybe I'll leave the profession. But when I met Sid and was around the other people who had been studying with him, they had such a joy. They were happy. They were happy. And I hadn't felt that happy since I was a little boy. I got very serious over the years, more and more serious. Life was heavy, life was stressful, life is hard work. And so I was very attracted to that feeling, but everything that Sid said, because we sat around in a circle and had our dinner, and then all of a sudden Sid started speaking. And I thought, what am I got myself into here? And everyone was just really quiet, and I got very anxious. And he just kind of looked at me, and he just started addressing every question that would come up in my mind. And that really spooked me out. I thought, he's reading my mind. What have I got myself into here? But despite my intellect raging with, yeah, but what about this? And yeah, but what about the past? And well, yeah, but what about trauma? What about addiction? And what about this? And what about that? All these barriers I was setting up. In spite of that, this feeling of lightheartedness came back to me. It reawakened. And I began to kind of settle down in that evening. And I don't know, I just had fun. I fell in love. I was having fun. I was laughing a lot. And even though I didn't understand what Sid was saying, it was impacting me. It was changing me without me cognitively understanding what was going on. And I've never looked back since that day. You know, it was like I came back to Minnesota, and a few months later, Michael moved to Minnesota, and I was just building a house at the time. And so the day the house was available, she came up and we moved in together. And I went back to my private practice, and I looked at my partner and I told her what happened, my business partner, and she didn't know what to make of it. And so we had a meeting with my supervisor, a psychiatrist, Dr. Carl Whitaker, very famous family therapist. And I told him what happened. And he said, it sounds like you've had a paradigm shift, Joe. And he sent me Kuhn's book on paradigm shifts. And he was very respectful. He said, but you've had a paradigm shift. And my business partner got offered a job, and she moved to California at the same time, coincidentally. So that ended. I was in a solo practice. And pretty soon my practice, because I didn't know how to do counseling with the three principles, there were no courses on it. There was no training. There was no books. There was nothing. There was just Sid Banks and a few tapes, audio tapes. And so I just kind of winged it. But even though I didn't know what I was doing, my clients started getting well. And they would say, why didn't you tell me this earlier? This is so simple. Instead of going back in the past and rehashing all this is so much easier. Thank you. And then within a few weeks, they would be gone. And they were, pretty soon, I didn't have very many clients. And I thought, this is not a good financial model. But then they told their friends, and pretty soon I had more clients than I could see. And Christine Heath was down the hall, and she thought I'd gone crazy. She was a feminist therapist. And so I brought Dr. Roger Mills, to the University of Minnesota to speak about this new psychology. And I got about 150 people to come hear him. And Chris Heath, I think, was the only one that heard anything. And it really hit her hard. And she really changed. So the two of us decided we would start our own mental health center and train therapists, because we had way too many clients. We couldn't see them all. The referrals were just exploding. And so we started an institute and became a training center for the three principles. And we did research, and mostly we did counseling, but then we started spreading out and working with school systems and inner city housing and corporations and hospitals, and we just saw that the principles applied to everything. So that Chris ended up moving to Hawaii and starting another center over there, and I ran that institute for many years. And but it was we treated thousands of people, and people just changed so much. It was everything I'd ever looked for when I felt the calling to help people as a counselor. And I finally found how to help people and myself in the process. Yeah. So that's kind of the beginning of the story.
Yeah, that's great. Great to hear. Yeah, I guess story. That was before the three principles were, put into words. Yeah.
Yeah, there was no name at that point, and then early on it was neocognitive psychology. My first book I wrote, The Serenity Principle, the initial version of it called it neocognitive psychology. That was in the early 90s. And then about 6-7 years later, it shifted to psychology of mind. And then it shifted again to the three principle psychology in the early 2000s. So there's been many evolutions. This keeps evolving over time and simplifying and spreading around the world. If you were at the last conference, it's just amazing. There were people from 38 countries there, and just every possible nationality, religion, profession. It's just amazing what's happened. We're very, very lucky.
Has the way that you share or help your clients, has it changed much during these years?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think as we've tried to pass this on to other people in curriculums and graduate courses and books and things, it comes into a form from time to time, and then the form becomes confining because the principles are formless. They're spiritual, and there was a period of time where we taught core concept courses on psychology of mind, and we were the president of the American Psychological Association came to one of our conventions, and he recommended that if you want to get this into the mainstream of psychology, you need to have core concepts, you need to do research, and you need to have courses that train people in these concepts. So we did that for a while, but that was just, Sid came in and just, what are you guys doing? You've ruined it. So that's kind of a long answer to your question, but there's been the way that I've passed this on to my clients keeps evolving as I evolve. And that's the way it works, really, is that as you keep growing and changing and deepening in your understanding, it seems to me my work gets simpler, becomes more simple and more impactful than before. Before I was explaining too much. I was trying to describe it because people want that. They want an intellectual understanding. But what we're pointing to is something that already exists complete and whole within every human being. Our innate happiness, our innate mental health, our innate potential is whole and complete because it's a pre-existing condition before form. Before we came into form, we were in this perfect, already complete form, this divine intelligence, this universal consciousness. And then as we go through life, we cover that up through habits and conditioning and the ups and downs of life and the challenges that we have. We begin to create ideas and concepts that, like with your daughter, was it your daughter? I can't remember how to say your name. When she came into the world, she's just so pure and lighthearted and curious and just gets over things easily and, not afraid to express herself, just open. And then over time, because of socialization and just our experiences, we start to cover that up innocently to become normal, quote unquote.
It's like that you said, we do as best as we can, as best as we understand to help people. So, but when you get the insight of the three principles, you must trust your inner guide, that all the creation is from inside out, and not from the dad saying to the daughter how she should behave, because it's only my thoughts that coming from my mouth. It's better for her to understand it, that everything is created from yourself and out.
Yeah. Whereas the old behavioral psychology, traditional psychology, you're just a blank slate, and then you get conditioned through habit to develop core concepts, belief systems, ideas, a personality, a diagnosis,
Yeah.
a symptomatology. And so this psychology is so revolutionary because it sees people as already innately healthy versus broken. And that alone is transformative. But then, in addition to seeing people as whole and complete, as you gain an understanding yourself as a coach or counselor, you can pass on how your human experience is created from the inside out, not the outside in. And that's what Sid said. This is an inside out psychology, the inside out revolution. Michael Neal talks about that we're certainly we're influenced. You speak Swedish, I speak English as a native language. We have certain cultural habits, we have certain ways of doing things, and what kind of foods we eat, and all of that. So you can't deny that happens. But our true nature is much greater than our habits or our conditioning. Our true nature is our essence of our being. And when you're separated from that awareness of who you really are, you create dis-ease, you create stress, you create unhappiness. But when you remember or recognize or reawaken who you really are, your natural well-being, happiness bobs up to the surface. And that's so that it's so simple, but that's really the essence of it, is that everything is a process of mind, thought, and consciousness, that the mind is this universal, infinite source of everything that we're a part of. Thought is how we create our own unique individual reality of life, and consciousness is the fact that we can be aware that we're doing it.
Yeah.
And so when we're going off the cliff and we're taking the road, the car off the main road, we get emotional reactions, and so we can calibrate and get back on track. So that consciousness is that awareness that allows us to not always be happy, but to bring ourselves back to happiness, bring ourselves back to our natural state. And also, it's quite human to lose track of that from time to time.
Yeah.
Partly how we evolve is to go off track, and then we get a deeper understanding.
Yeah, I guess it was Sid said that life is a contact sport.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it's in working with alcoholics and drug addicts, there's a lot of relapse and a lot of challenges in early recovery. And I always talk to them about, relapse is not a failure, it's an opportunity to get a deeper understanding. If your mind is open and you're willing to acknowledge that you've fallen, and you don't try to figure out how to get back. You just acknowledge it, be open to it, and then you'll, in that acceptance, your mind will settle and you'll get a new insight that'll take you to a higher level of consciousness naturally. So the mistakes are opportunities for deeper, ongoing understanding, evolution, higher consciousness. And over the course of the last 40 years, I'm learning the same thing over and over again, and it just gets simpler. And it life seems more effortless than effortful. I often say, I feel like I'm on a magic carpet and there's no steering wheel. I'm just going wherever it's taken me. And as a result of that, miracles happen all the time. I was told not to go to college. I couldn't write, I've written six books.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
And I was so afraid to speak to even a small group of people. I would be so nervous I would throw up. I would just get sick to my stomach. I couldn't speak in front of groups. The only course I flunked in college was public speaking. And now I make my living doing public speaking. So it's we're very lucky.
Yeah, we sure are. I was thinking the other day about thoughts, that our realities are created, through the principle of thought, and the thinking we do, creates our realities and so on. And then I thought that in some 3P communities, there's a lot of discussions and so on about a thought, a single thought. But I was wondering, is that really relevant in some way? Because I noticed that in some situations, for example, if I feel something physical, like I had some issue with my balance system. So if I just, turn my head, the whole world was spinning around.
Oh,
So
I get vertigo. Yeah.
yeah. So it's like there's that information that something is happening, and then there was a lot of something else, and after a while I discovered, well, that's my thinking, but at that time I couldn't see it. It was like one box with everything, and at certain times, for me at least, it can feel like I'm not thinking, but there's something going on, and then I can sort of just relax and get more present, and that sort of disappears. It's like, if you have a virus on your computer, you may not notice it, but if you remove it, something clears up. So that was just some reflections from me. But the question for you, Joey, is that is it sort of relevant to talk about a thought from your perspective?
I think that's going down the rabbit hole when you analyze your thinking, or try to think differently, or wonder why you're thinking what you're thinking, or um, what you're. That's more cognitive psychology, is focused on the content of thought, the thoughts that you have. Whereas the three principles, counseling as a counseling or a coaching application, is more about being aware that you're thinking, because we fall asleep to the fact that we're thinking and creating our perceptions, our emotions, and our behavior. We're just kind of going through the motions in life on autopilot, which is fine. But if you hit the ditch, you need to get back on the road. And so sometimes hitting the little bumps on the side of the road is a wake up, just like your emotions of stress or unhappiness are a signal that you're maybe misusing your thinking. It's just kind of an alert system, like an alert that fundamentally I'm living in the feeling of my thinking. That's what's creating my feelings, not what I'm thinking about, but the fact that I'm thinking about what I'm thinking about. And that's a whole different ballgame. In the cognitive psychologies, you get in and you try to change your thinking. You analyze where your thinking came from, where those habits derived from. And so you go back into the problem to fix the problem. In three principles psychology, as a counseling coaching process, you're going back to the well of infinite potential thought to create new thought. And new thought is where hope comes from. New thought is where change comes from. New thought is where insight comes from. New thought is where transformation happens. So pointing people back to the source of transformation and change is really the whole point if you want to help someone have a better life, transform, be happier. You have to point them back to the well of infinite thought that is a much deeper, grander intelligence than your little brain. And when you rely on that, it's like if you were limited to just the information on your computer, you just only have what was put in there. But because we're connected to the internet, you can ask any question about anything, and you have all the libraries and all the science and every bit of encyclopedias and everything at your fingertips on your little iPhone. It's infinite. So universal mind is like that as a metaphor. It's like the web of all knowledge. But it's even greater than the web, because it's not only everything that's ever been created, it's everything that is yet to be created. It's the source of creativity, new thoughts, innovations, ideas. Just yesterday I was doing I have a podcast series myself called Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane. And yesterday I interviewed two nurses, one from Ireland and one from Texas, and then a woman who is terminally ill, who's in hospice. And we just talked about how the principles help nurses, number one, not burn out, but number two, really operate from a state of presence where they can be caring and compassionate with their patients and have intuitive, instinctual insights about how to be of service to them, and how that healthy state of mind, happy state of mind, is the most potent healing agent in nursing, for example. All the techniques and all the details that you're doing are of no value without caring, without compassion. And then there was a patient, a woman who's also worked in the mental health field for a long time too, but she's got COVID, she's got severe rheumatoid arthritis, a form of malaria. She's had, you name it, she's had all these illnesses, but she said, even with being in hospice, 24-hour nursing care, being on oxygen. I've never felt a deeper peace in my life. I'm so at peace. I'm so joyful. And then, I have my episodes of, can't breathe or, severe pain, but I've got that knowing that who I really am, my divine connection, will never leave me even when I'm dead. So I'm not afraid to die. I'm not afraid of dying, going through the dying. And you can watch it. It'll be on.
Yeah, we'll have to. Yeah, it sounds very
Really
interesting.
powerful story. Her story was just, and both nurses were incredible, talking about how the principles have helped them in healthcare and working with people. And then last one I did Beverly Wilson Hayes. I don't know if you've heard her speak. Whoa, that was my first podcast. That was like the rocket ship going on.
She was lovely at the conference. I really enjoyed her, the totally different and very personal way of speaking.
Yeah. Very powerful, very spiritual person.
So I was in your website earlier this day, and I saw that you were saying to help you help people find true happiness and peace of mind. So can you tell us a little bit what you're thinking about? What is true happiness for you?
Well, I used to think that true happiness was getting what I wanted. Whatever desire, I really want that car, or I really want to go out with her, or I really want a house in the country, or I can't wait to go camping and be in the wilderness so I can get away from the city, and then I won't be so stressed. And so I would be happy. I'd be on my way up to go to the wilderness, or even just getting packed for it. I'm already happy. And I'd be really happy. And I thought, oh, wow, look at all the trees and look at the birds and look at the moose and the bear and all this. And, oh, I'm so happy being here. And then I'd start thinking about, oh, I got to go home, back to work, back to my clients. And I'd start getting stressed. I'm in the same environment, the same wilderness. And because of my mind, I'm stressing out. And it never occurred to me it was my thoughts that were creating my unhappiness and my happiness, anticipating. But so I always looked outside to things, praise, being liked, being respected, travel, circumstances, those things would make me happy. But I could do all those things and still be unhappy. And then so instead of realizing what was really going on, that was my thinking, I would just do more of what I was doing. I would go to an even more remote place to camp.
Yeah.
Or I would start mountain climbing, or I would, so I was always searching for a feeling that was inside of me all along, but I was looking out there. Just like in the Wizard of Oz story I told at the conference, the wizard didn't really give the Tin Man a heart. He didn't really give the lion courage, and he didn't give the scarecrow a brain. They already had it, he just helped them see that they already had it. And that's what Sid did for psychology, for the world, was that he showed us that everything we're looking for is inside. Now, that's not a new concept. The Eastern thought and religion is often pointed to the fact that the peace that passes all understanding lies within us. So the truth has been around. It's come to the surface many times through enlightenments of various Buddhas and Jesus and other enlightened beings throughout time. But and even people like Eckhart Tolle and lots of very wise people in the psychology field, the spiritual field. But what one of my clients said this to me last week. He says, you know, he'd studied with Eckhart Tolle, he'd studied with Brene Brown, he'd read over 5,000 self-help books. 5,000, and on the Zoom, he says, "You want to see him?" And he had 3 walls, floor to ceiling, of books.
That's even more than I have read.
No.
And he said, all of them, they're really, I love to go to retreats with Eckhart Tolle and all these people, but I would go and I'd get this nice feeling from them, but then I'd come back and I didn't have anything to take with me. What Sid did, he said, how it was different. Sid had this experience, this enlightenment experience. And in his enlightenment, he came back with how to give that to people so that they can find their own experience through the 3 principles. So he was given in a way the how-to, not really how-to, but the understanding to awaken that in every human being, not just special enlightened people. And that's why it's going out in psychology, because psychology is the study of the mind, the soul, and the spirit from the Greek. And principles are about the mind, the soul, and the spirit. And this is the true psychology, in my estimation. It's the principles that psychology has been looking for to make it a true science, like physics and chemistry and biology and the other sciences. They have their principles, but psychology hasn't had its principles. So it was just creating lots of theories and various techniques and schools of thought, and they're just like fads. They come and they go, they come and they go, they come and they go. There's no foundation of principle. Sid gave us the principles. That was the gift.
So are you saying that his enlightenment experience, that the most important that he sort of took with him or understood is the knowledge to describe psychology as a real science?
Yeah, I think when he had his experience, he first of all, he said his first words to his wife were, "I've come home, pet, I've come home." So he came home to his true essence, his spiritual identity, is beyond the personality of Sid Banks, beyond habits of Sid Banks, the essence. And he didn't have the words mind, thought, and consciousness right away. That came later, but he knew that we're all living in a world of thought, and that's what is the creation of our experience, is the thought. That the illusion of the physical world is it's not where it's at. It's not about changing the external. It's because you can't experience the trees, the music, your children. You can't experience it without mind, thought, and consciousness. And that's true for every human being that's ever lived. So once that was discovered, then the danger is to put it into too many words, because then it gets intellectualized.
Yeah.
So you can't really teach it to someone. It has to be realized through an insight. You just do the best you can, you know. But
Yeah.
And when I'm working with people, I'm really just having them reflect on when they've had their own insights in the past, and but when were you really talk about a time when you were really happy, you know, and um, you know, to try to help bridge to people's experience of the true reality, you know, when they fell in love with their spouse, or when their child was born, or when they were on vacation and the sunset made them cry. You know, there was something that happened. So when that's people touch the divine, people touch the true essence, but they don't know, they don't have the compass, the map, how to stay there. And that's what the principles gives us, is the navigation through our own moods and states of consciousness and mind to find our way back home, like Sid said.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that when you have got some insight on the three principles, you have a little roadmap or a treasure map, so you can easily come back home instead of trying to do some new method or thinking that you are on the wrong road. If you just calm down, you are already home, and everything is perfect again.
Mhm.
But in the world we are living in today, the most people think that they have to do something to come there. But it's the opposite. Do nothing, and
Yeah.
you will be there.
One of the nurses yesterday, the nurse from Ireland, she says the way that I try to teach this to the nurses is I use the metaphor of a snow globe. You know, a little, like a little Christmas tree in there, or Santa Claus, or a reindeer, or whatever.
Yeah.
When you shake it up, it's just, you can't see the image in there. But if you just set it down, gravity will stop the snow, and then you can see what's in there. And it's kind of like that, you know, that, you know, our thinking gets shaken up, and we can't see the forest for the trees. We can't see the simple truth. We can't see the solution. But when we quiet our minds, not by quieting our mind, but by doing nothing, the mind quiets. And then the truth is revealed. The reality, the true reality is seen. The solution to a disagreement, to climate change, to finding a vaccine, to inventing a safer system for air travel. You know, all of these insights have come through scientists, human beings. They'll just be curious about something, and then something will, out of the blue, hit them, and it will create a new invention or a scientific revolution, like you know, Isaac Newton. You know, when he was away from the pandemic in London, took a year off. That's when he created all of his theories of motion and light and prisms and all of that. Was when he was not in school, not when he was in school, but when he wasn't in school. It gave his mind room to get curious and to ponder and all this, which allowed the Industrial Revolution to occur. That was a divine insight. And now we travel to other planets and the moon, and God knows what we'll be able to do, you know.
Yeah.
And we're only like, we're probably ants compared to what's possible.
Yeah. So I also wrote a text on your web page that make me curious. You said that humans have become addicted to fear. Can you explain a little bit more of that?
Yeah, I grew up in a family that was very worried a lot. Worried about the weather or the crops. It was a agricultural family, so always worried about the weather. That was the main topic of conversation, the weather. Or do we have enough money? Worried about money. Worried about how are the kids going to turn out? How are my mother was a doctoral candidate in worry. And so I grew up thinking worry was what you just did. You had to, in order to succeed, in order to improve, in order to grow up, you had to become a better worrier, which was fear. And so innocently, fish in water, I grew up thinking that fear was a way to be successful and accomplish more and have more security. Because the more you got, the more secure you'd feel. But then you'd worry if you're going to lose what you had. You always had to worry. You don't want to be complacent. You don't want to be content. Then your guard will be down, and then so I became addicted to fear and innocently just learned that habit. And as I got older, I just thought about more things to worry about, and thought the only way I was going to get into be a psychologist was to get straight A's in college. And so I studied and worried and just hardly slept, and I was just driven. And then when I got into graduate school, then I was it was always something more to worry about. There was no end to the worries. And so I developed panic attacks in college, and diagnosable fear. And I thought it was a good thing to be fearful, but it was uncomfortable and I didn't like it, and I couldn't sleep at night because I was so worried. I'd wake up in the middle of the night in a panic, and then I couldn't get back to sleep. And my back would go out because I was so tense. My muscles had all kinds of physical problems from fear, and then all I could do was the best I could do was learn how to do yoga and meditate and go for a run every day and eat properly. And those were coping mechanisms to cope with my fear, but my thinking didn't change. It was just, I just found better ways to cope with it. And so when I met Sid and I learned the principles, as I said, I was burned out. Within 6 weeks, my burnout was completely gone. My stress levels went way, way down. They didn't go away, but they went way, way down. And so when 9/11 hit, the Twin Towers were hit by the terrorists, there was just an epidemic of fear in America. The news was just constantly filled with fear mongering, and I just saw everybody was just becoming isolated and fearful of each other and other races and religions and division and all this. And so I wrote Fear Proof Your Life, about my own story, but also about how to protect ourselves from the fear industrial complex, the media that creates fear in order to sell stuff to us that we think we need now. Better alarm systems went way up. Guns in America, woo, lots of guns. You need a machine gun to protect yourself from those enemies. And so all of this fear, just it's insanity. It's just insanity. So I wrote that book, and then the latest book I wrote, Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane, finding innate resilience in our turbulent times, is about how it's about principles basically, but it's about how in these times that we're in now, it's not the end. It's a time for transformation to a higher level of spiritual awakening. This is the time for humanity must evolve in consciousness in order to not kill ourselves off through climate change, through wars, through nuclear annihilation, etc. We have to have a shift in our consciousness. We have to awaken, and that's what the book is a way to, just like all the other books, educate people about how their minds work. And but half the book is just stories of people, police officers, doctors, nurses, um, gang members, criminals in prison, how all of them learned the principles and how it changed their lives. Stories of transformation. So I'm really hoping that book will really get out there to help humanity to see that we don't have to suffer here. We're not born to suffer. We're born to be happy.
Yeah. Now.
Yeah, happy now.
Sounds great.
How do you say lyckra?
Lyckligare nu.
Oh, I don't know if I can do that. Lyckligare.NU or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have those places in my mouth.
No.
We can find them for
you.
you.
Must have a lot of room in there.
Yeah. We do. We will teach you when you come to Sweden.
Oh, yeah, you betcha.
Yeah.
It will be perfect. So when will your book be out? Is it in the fall?
October 12th is the
Okay.
release date, but you can pre-order it on all the major, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all of the book sites already have it up, ready to order.
Great.
Pre-order.
Yeah.
It will be very, very interesting to read that one as well.
And the podcast will continue even after the book's out, but I'll be interviewing the people in the book. Michael Neal, I just talked to him. I'm gonna interview him. He wrote the foreword to the book. Jacqueline Hollows and the Beyond Recovery boys there. I'm gonna do an interview with all them, and lots of different people.
That's so great. I'm really, really impressed by the Beyond the Recovery team. They share so deeply and beautiful, and it's really, I think it really points to that this understanding isn't about time. It's about going inside deep and see what you can see. Doesn't have to be 40 years, but it can be 40 years. But it can be like 4 years as well.
It can be in a split second.
Yeah.
It's insight is Sid's autobiography that I don't know when it's going to come out. It's called Jumping the Boundaries of Time, Space, and Matter. And that's what it is. An insight is just, it breaks the boundaries, time, space, and matter. Sid spoke to physicists once, a whole room full of physicists, theoretical physicists, at a university, and they were blown away by Sid. But they said, "We don't understand what you're saying, but we know you know what you're saying."
That is so
we
funny.
know you're onto something, but we can't understand it.
This has been really great, Joe. It was really, really nice to have you here with us today.
Well, thank you so much.
Is there anything more you would like to mention in terms of what you do, in terms of offerings and so on?
Well, the only, I do coaching some, and mostly at this stage in my life, I'm more writing and public speaking. I really want to train people in the principles to get this out.
Yeah.
But no, I don't have anything in particular. I'm just, I'm hoping in September, Jacqueline and Christian McNeil, they're going to do a conference that, like the one we did here in St. Paul last year on addictions and the three principles. They're going to be doing one in Edinburgh, Scotland. And they invited me to come, and I just don't know what the timing with the book and all that, if it's going to work out, or with COVID and travel, and there's a lot of unknowns, so I don't know if we'll get over there or not. But if I do, it would be fun to come up to Sweden.
Yeah,
My wife and I have never been to Scandinavia. Been most places in Europe, but not Scandinavia.
Yeah,
You
of
have,
course.
you
You're
have to
very
visit
welcome.
us.
Yeah.
Be fun. Well, good to meet you guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. It has really been an honor to have you on our podcast. So thank you for sharing so much hope to the rest of the world.
You're welcome, Nicholas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Joe. It has been a really,
Philip and Nicholas.
yeah, really pleasure to have you here, and not just hear you speak, but also get that nice feeling that comes with it. I really appreciate it.
Well, you guys are doing good work there. You keep it up. Thank you so much for sharing with all the people you share with.
Great. So have a lovely day, and hope to see you soon.
Okay, you guys take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.